In the wilderness, people are faced with two options: facing death or surviving to tell the tale. These are their stories.
Wow, I love that intro, dude.
So good. So good. It's always
So good.
But anyways, most of you have heard of the Bermuda Triangle, right? Have you heard of that, Scout?
Oh,
you
yeah.
have?
Yep.
But have you ever heard of the Bennington Triangle?
No, I have not.
Well, the Bennington Triangle
Tell me more.
is in Vermont. Okay? It's in southwestern Vermont. It's a 93 square kilometer area of woods. And between 1945 and 1950, there were a string of unsolved disappearances in what is now known as the Bennington Triangle.
Whoa.
It shook communities.
Sorry, where at?
In southwestern Vermont.
Interesting. Okay.
So, let's see. Bennington has had bad luck since the 1800s. Its local economy, mainly mining and logging, collapsed. Tourism failed, and a huge flood devastated the community at the close of the 19th century. This bad luck followed them into the 20th century. So then we can get into the disappearances. From 1945 to 1950, 6 people disappeared, one after the other. The first was Carl Herrick in November 1943. This incident is often overlooked in discussion about the Bennington disappearances because a body was found and a definitive cause of death was given. Carl was hunting with his cousin Henry, 16 kilometers northeast of Glastonbury Mountain, which lies at the center of the Bennington Triangle. The pair got separated, and Henry contacted authorities to look for him. After a few days, searchers found Herrick's body. His gun was nearby with no bullets discharged. The autopsy determined that the cause of death was squeezing. His ribs had punctured his lung, and the townfolk did not show any particular concern afterwards. 2 years later, an experienced hiker and hunter named Mitty Rivers went missing on November 12, 1945. The 74-year-old was guiding a group of 4 hunters on a mountain trek. He was very familiar with the trail, as he had walked it multiple times. However, after going ahead of the group at a spot called Hell Hollow Brook, which is near the Long Trail, which is a pretty famous trail in Vermont, he was gone. Firemen, local volunteers, and eventually the U.S. Army searched for Rivers for over a month. The only clue they found was one rifle cartridge, and no body has ever been found in this case. A year later, in 1946, an 18-year-old student at Bennington College named Paula Jean Weldon told her roommates that she was going to the Long Trail for a hike. A local man named Louis Snap gave her a ride and dropped her off a few kilometers from the trail. On arriving, she spoke with some hikers before she ventured off on her own. She was last seen on December 1st wearing a red coat. A 4-week search led by her father and the police began. However, all leads became dead ends. With no hope in sight, Paula's father believed that she might have had a secret boyfriend whom she ran away with who killed her. Paula's father left Bennington, never returned, and her case is unsolved. The strangest of them all, the tale gets stranger. Exactly 3 years after Paula's disappearance, a 68-year-old World War II veteran named James Tedford disappeared on a moving bus. He was visiting friends out of town and was headed back to Bennington by bus. 14 passengers confirmed that he did not get off the bus before Bennington, and he was sleeping throughout the trip. His belongings were still on his seat. To this day, there's no explanation for his disappearance unless all of the witnesses thought wrong or were lying. On October 12, 1950, 8-year-old Paul Jepson was with his mother while she worked on the family farm. She left her son in her pickup while she fed the farm's pigs for an hour. When she returned, he was gone. He was last seen wearing a red coat. An immediate search of the farm and the surrounding area was conducted. Police bloodhound followed the scent to a crossroads where it eventually faded. The trail was in the general direction of Glastonbury Mountain, which Jepson was obsessively talking about for several days before his disappearance. Police theorized that a passing motorist could have whisked Paul away as he tried to reach the mountain. However, the case went cold, and there were no more developments. More than 2 weeks after Paul Jepson's vanishing, 53-year-old Frida Langer, an avid hiker, met a similar fate. She and her cousin, Herbert Elsner, were hiking 17 kilometers from Glastonbury Mountain at the Somerset Reservoir. After getting wet from falling into a creek, she went back to the campsite to change. Herbert stayed behind to wait for her on the trail. When Frida did not return, Herbert reported her missing, and for the next 2 weeks, 400 people scoured the area extensively. 6 months later, her body was found 5 kilometers from the campsite. Coroners could not determine the cause of death because of the corpse's accelerated decomposition.
Dang.
So those are all of the disappearances. Now we get into the theories as to what's happening. The folklore around the Bennington Triangle stems from UFOs, curses, Bigfoot, and more. The Abenaki, I hope I'm saying that right, the Abenaki tribe believed that Glastonbury Mountain was cursed, as it housed their dead at its base. However, there are several connections we can draw from these incidents. 2 victims, Paula and Paul, were both wearing the color red. All 5 victims disappeared in mid-afternoon around 3 or 4 p.m. and not far from each other and during the last 3 months of the year. The first thought that comes to mind is the work of a serial killer. However, the variety in sex and age does not fit the usual modus operandi of a serial killer. There is no set pattern. It seems more to do with geographical location. I would argue that is a set pattern. The rough terrain and unpredictable weather are the most plausible explanations. The wind patterns and temperature in this region are very erratic, particularly in winter. Because of the wind, plants have grown in odd angles. Lost in the woods? What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, when they were talking about the most obvious explanation from them all disappearing in 3 months in the afternoon, and I was like, well, is that they got lost with night coming on. And then they're like, a serial killer. I was like, oh, okay.
I would agree. That is a little interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see. It is possible that the wacky winds and dense forest disoriented these hikers. In 2008, Robert Singley, who got lost in a heavy fog and spent the night in the woods, huddled around a small fire he made. He luckily made it back to his car in the morning. Others might have succumbed to hunger, thirst, and hypothermia. But why aren't there any bodies or clues? The second most popular theory is that the hikers fell down unmarked mine shafts and wells.
That was my other guess.
That's actually interesting. Yeah.
I think that's the best guess.
Yeah,
Here, actually, go ahead.
Considering how remote the area is, if the hikers fell down one of these shafts, no one might have ever found them. A third, less plausible theory is an animal attack. The area has cougars and black bears, but eastern cougars are pretty rare, and 60 years ago they were even rarer. More rare? Rare? I don't know if they wrote that right. They may have vanished entirely from New England for some decades around that time. That aside, cougar attacks are unusual, and while black bears have killed people on rare occasions, there's never been a serial black bear killer, unlike the occasional tiger in India or crocodile in Africa.
Man-eaters.
On September 17th, 2019, the remains of a modern victim, New York resident Jessica Hildenbrandt, were found near the Somerset Reservoir. Police determined that her death was a homicide. No leads have turned up about her killer. She was nicknamed Red by her family and friends. In August 2021, Joseph Schoenig was found in his truck at the Somerset Reservoir with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He had been missing for several weeks. His truck was red. Wow, they're really digging into that red there.
Big fans of the red there, eh?
Despite the variety of circumstances, the color red still remains consistent.
Wait, which guy was this?
In 2021, some guy self-inflicted gunshot wound.
And they're curious what happened, because I have a theory.
But
Did you happen to see what I posted in the chat? It's like
right now.
It's this one nifty thing I found before, which I was curious. So I'm glad I posted a Snopes article, because it turns out it is partially true. It's partially true, partially not. But it's a map of missing. So the top map shows mysterious cases of people. Here, let me share my screen.
I'm sharing it.
You got it. Okay. The top map shows mysterious cases of people vanishing without a trace, and the bottom maps show America's largest cave systems. And if you look at the maps, they're remarkably similar. And
they really are. Yeah.
I would bet if you also added mining, you'd see a lot
There's
more
cave
mix
aliens.
on the left. So what Snopes says is that those mysterious vanishings are like a specific type of vanishing that happens in national parks, I guess, called 411 cases. So it does make sense that there would be correlation. But yeah, a lot of I don't know. To me, a lot of these missing cases, the answer is pretty obvious. Like the person went and died in the woods somewhere.
Dude, check out the Midwest. It looked like, I don't know if the caves are literally like the state boundary lines. That's interesting. Like
probably
pretty
rivers.
Closely.
That's
They're
probably
pretty
where
closely.
Rivers are, right?
That is a lot of rivers probably, yeah.
And I mean,
There
is
is
that the Mississippi that you're talking about? No, it's
the
not.
Ohio and the Mississippi would go through the Midwest, yeah.
And that's because, I mean, it's rivers that cause caves, right? They dissolve limestone. Is that right? Is that real?
Any water dissolves limestone, but yeah,
okay.
I think a lot of it, often the biggest caves, it's because of like a river or something.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting though. Have you read through this at any point?
This little article.
Is there any
thing?
like interesting point? Like obviously that chart itself is really interesting, but is there any like actual points besides that they made that?
No, and the biggest thing was debunking this, because they say like it's presented as if these are all vanishing cases, and that's not the case. This is let me see. As noted above, the People Map is not an exhaustive list of all missing persons in the U.S. The National Missing and Unidentified Person reports that nearly 600,000 people go missing every year. Many of these cases are resolved with the persons being found alive and well, but tens of thousands will remain missing for more than a year. The vast majority of these cases are not on this map. The above displayed People Map shows what Paulides calls 411 cases, or cases that Paulides has deemed as having strange circumstances. This could be a case involving dogs that failed to pick up a scent, people who were found with missing clothing items, or cases involving people who traveled unusual distances after they were last seen. So it's like, this is particularly those weird vanished cases.
I mean, it's almost certain that some of the disappearances is exactly this, which is interesting. Yes. I never really had thought about that before. Like, and somebody just falling in a cave and like
it's pretty
missing,
common,
but nobody knows. Yeah,
that was one of the things that I was like kind of really grilled on when I moved out west. Was like, do not fuck around with caves or in mine shaft areas, and
especially alone.
Yeah, and if you see a wooden panel in the middle of the desert, don't fuck with it. It's probably a mine cover. Yeah. And that was the wisdom, was like, because you'll just disappear. Like, they don't find you. You don't turn up later on. You're gone. And like, that's it.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Horrible way to go.
Yep. Second only to getting caught in a tight cave and squeezed to death.
Nutty putty.
Yeah,
one of the worst deaths ever.
We should do a cool podcast where one of us goes and dies in a cave or mine or something.
Yeah, that would be so cool.
We could podcast it as it's happening.
I guess that would be the last episode.
Yeah. Well, for that guest.
Intern? Let's get some interns.
Yeah, let's get some interns. Exactly.
If you want to be an intern, let us know. Contact us.
We've got exciting assignments.
Many open positions and exciting assignments. We don't pay or give college credit.
We do not pay or give college credit.
But we can guarantee that you might have the experience of a lifetime.
Some would say the experience of your lifetime. Yeah. The ultimate experience of your lifetime.